All right, hey guys, back with the second video on Mead. This is the roots of symbolic interactionism. What we're going to talk about in this video is basically him going from these individuals who have developed a sense of the self, or the ability to take the perspective of the group and apply it to themselves, and talk about, okay, so now what do? You've got that, and now you've got a bunch of people who have that, so what happens next? This is going to lay the foundation for symbolic interactionism, because symbolic interactionism basically is a theoretical perspective that says we interact based on symbols, based on things that hold meaning. What Mead is going to talk about with significant gestures and significant symbols is he's going to kind of lay out a couple of the core concepts for symbolic interactionism. It's not going to seem earth-shaking particularly, but it's important to remember that the first person who kind of thinks this stuff up, I mean, it wasn't there before, and they've thought it up, and that's kind of an incredible accomplishment. So the concepts aren't gonna, I'm probably not gonna go as crazy as I went during Durkheim, but it's important to understand this, somebody had to think this up, and it ends up playing out into a bunch of interactionist theoretical perspectives later in the 20th century, and they can all basically be traced back to George Herbert Mead. Okay, so you got a bunch of people who have selves, and if they were raised in the same society, it's important to understand they share the same generalized other, or at least a generalized other that very, very closely overlaps with other people's. They can take each other's perspectives, so we're interacting, we can take each other's perspective, we can both take the perspective of the generalized other. It may not be identical, but it's very, very close. What do? They're going to interact, and here are the concepts that Mead gives us. So he talks about a difference between a conversation of gestures and significant gestures. Sorry, they're not great descriptive terms. His idea of a conversation of gestures, think about dogs interacting. They see what another dog does, they react. Just like that. There's no mental like interpretation. It's stimulus response. Just like that. What Mead says is that human beings, especially once they have developed this sense of being able to take the perspective of the generalized other, they can act, and their actions, and I mean by actions, he talks about vocal gestures too. They are imbued with meaning. This is what he means by significant gestures. Me talking, he would call these vocal gestures. I'm making noises that don't have any inherent meaning, but we have attached meaning to them. When I say the word language, just those sounds, language, are meaningless. They don't inherently mean anything. We have attached meaning to them. So when I talk, when I use language, that is what he would call a significant gesture. A gesture, a thing I've done that is imbued with meaning. And importantly, that meaning isn't something I made up, although later on we'll get into improvisation. But for right now, it's important to remember that meaning, my interaction with you, is based on the group. The group precedes our ability to interact with each other. Okay, and let me see if there's something else that I wanted to say about that. The meaning is dependent on the group. Oh, yeah. So importantly, what that means is for you and I to, if you and I were raised in a different group, a different society than America, our interaction would be different, even though you are you and I am me, because the self that each of us would have would be different. It would be the ability to take on the perspective of the generalized other, but it's a different generalized other. In my intro class, I used the example of if I had been raised in Afghanistan by the Taliban, the generalized other that I would have internalized would say that it was appropriate for me to stone people to death. I wouldn't be like it wouldn't be me being like, stoning people to death is wrong. Of course it wouldn't be wrong to me if that was the generalized other I had interpreted. So that's an important thing to understand. Not just me as an individual, but our interaction depends on that societal or group context. Depends on us having the same or at least a very, very overlapping generalized other. Okay, so this is going to get kind of technical. It's easier than it sounds. Significant symbols are a specific type of a significant, or I'm sorry, I just messed it up. A significant gesture is one type of a significant symbol. And you can think about this, even though I screwed it up a moment ago, you can think about this, of course it would be, because my voice, or the words I'm saying having meaning to them, is one thing that can hold meaning. But my white skin also holds meaning in our society. My maleness also holds meaning in our society. A door holds meaning in our society. It means something different than a wall. So all of these things, in my intro course, I talk about the symbolic universe, all of the things that hold meaning. And words are one of those things. Behaviors are part of that as well. But also things in nature and things that we made, they are all hold meaning. So significant gestures are a subset of the broader category of significant symbols. For Mead, the most crucial significant symbol for us is language, and that's why it gets its own little place there. Because words allow us to communicate with each other. Okay, that's it for that. Even with me messing that up and having to back up, it's only 7 minutes. All right, so, but think about for just a moment what we've got. We've got individuals who share, who have overlapping generalized others, which means we are drawing on the same context. So we understand what each other's gestures, whether they are physical gestures or whether they are verbal gestures, we understand what they mean. But as of right now, everything is going to be static. You and I are both just drawing on the past, drawing on the generalized other, the group that preceded us, to interact. And we know that that's not what happens, right? Because, like, I'm talking to you via a computer, and that didn't used to be the case. So obviously, things change. But there's no model, there's not part of Mead's model yet. It's going to be part of the model in the next video when we talk about the difference between the I and the me. So we will get to that in the next video.